Hello everyone. Today we are going to start a new chapter, that is economic reforms since 1991 or new economic policy. Well, before going to understand about the reforms in our country, let me first tell all of you that 1991 was the year in which economic reforms in our country started. Now, why was reform started was simply because our economy was a very backward economy by that time. Not much growth was there as to how much growth you can say today, and also our trade relation with other foreign countries were very minimum. So, to improve our economy in the entire world, the government started some economic reforms, and the three major reforms that was started was liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Well, henceforth in this chapter we will be using the word LPG. These policies we will refer to as LPG, where the full form of LPG stands for liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Now, let's move ahead and please try to understand that why was there a need of these reforms in the year 1991. But before that, let me tell you, this economic reforms also has a separate word which is called as new economic policy. Now, as you can see over here, the first basic reason for introduction of economic reforms was high fiscal deficit. High fiscal deficits. Now, what is fiscal deficit? Please understand. It means whenever the expenditure of the government is more than its revenue, whenever the expenditure which is done by the government is more than its revenue earned, it is called fiscal deficit. And to overcome this loss, the government needs to borrow. So this borrowings which the government makes because of expenditure being more than the revenue is called fiscal deficit. Now, since fiscal deficit was high, it automatically means that borrowings were also very high. Now, please understand, the more the borrowings for any economy is, it shows that economy is in a poor condition. Also, the other big institutions like World Bank, IMF, also they keep less trust on our country. And it was prior to 1991 when fiscal deficit was very high. It showed that the financial status of our economy was not that very good, and also the faith which this big financial institution had, it was very poor. So there was a need of some reforms which could bring money in the country. Next was BOP crisis. BOP crisis. Well, please understand, BOP means balance of payment. BOP means balance of payment. Now, when we do any economic transaction with the rest of the world, please understand, when we do any economic transaction with the rest of the world, then either we earn or we pay. Now, the difference between this receipt and payment is called BOP. Prior to 1991, our BOP was also very high, which meant that our total payments that we made to the other countries was more, and the income or receipt that we received from the foreign countries was minimum, because of which we were suffering deficit. And to overcome this deficit, as to what I said in the first point, second point also says that borrowings were needed. So to reduce, and borrowings is always a loss for our economy. Please understand why. Because how much we borrow, we always need to pay more than that. Obviously, more because of the interest. And this was a tremendous loss for the economy. And this is for reason why economic reform was the only alternative to bring money flow of money in the economy. Third point is fall in foreign exchange reserves. Now please understand, till the year 1991, our foreign reserves in our country was so less that we could not have even paid an import bill of 10 days. Our foreign currency was very less. Why? Because no country used to come to us for investment. We did not have investment. We did not have much of exports. And that is why foreign currency was very limited. So to increase the value of foreign currency, there was a need of economic reform. Fourth one is the poor performance of the government organizations. The poor performance of the government organizations, which means that most of the government organizations before 1991 had the tagline of being corrupt. Most government organization, which is also called public sector undertakings, that is the PSU, had the tagline of being involved in corruption. And that is why they had to suffer huge losses. Now when government organization was not able to perform, naturally private will also not be performing. And this led to the need for reforms so that more private entities can come. They will bring investment, which will increase the GDP of the economy. And the last point is rise in the prices of goods. Rise in the prices of goods. Now this rise in prices, as to you, all of you know, this is also called inflation. So till 1991, our economies had a very high inflation. This means that people had to pay a lot of money for buying a good. So to increase the money supply and to improve the condition of the economy, there was a need of reform. And because of this inflation, what happened was the crisis became from bad to worse. And this is why there was a need of reform. So let me again repeat, there was a need of reform in our country because of fiscal deficit being high, because of the BOP crisis, because of there was less of foreign exchange, because the public sector undertakings were not performing properly, and because goods were very expensive during that period. I hope with this you will understand why was there a need of economic reforms in the year 1991. Thank you everyone.